All right, like I said before, if you came in late, my name is Brady Gaster. I'm here to talk to you about SignalR. I am not on the SignalR team. I'm on the Azure tooling team. That team comprises a lot of other teams, one of which happens to be the SignalR team, one of which happens to be the vNext team, the WTE team, and then there's Mads. He's just kind of on him, he does his own thing. Anybody check out Mads's like completely and totally 4 overflow rooms, full room? Is it good? You guys like that? He's got some nice tools for you if you're doing client-side stuff. All right, what we're going to be talking about today, is SignalR and how you can do real-time. Now, you don't have to do real-time only in the browser. And I'm going to show you some neat tricks as to how you can do it outside the browser in your .NET applications. Like I said earlier, we're going to have a couple of interactive demos. They're only going to be fun if they're interactive, or if you interact. I am going to try to kind of whir through everything, kind of like get through all the stuff. We've got about 8, 9 demos, I think. Most of this talk is demo. Very little of this talk is live coding. Why? I'm just not that good. Okay, I schedule meetings and send emails. I don't code that much anymore. So what I'm going to be doing today is pulling up code that's very, very short, very, very small blocks of code. I'm going to be walking through it and showing you how the stuff works. The only demo that I'll probably live code will be the first one. Why? Because it's the easiest one and I can code it in my sleep. So I just want to point out that if you're here to see live coding, set your expectations. You're not going to see a whole bunch of live coding. You will see a bunch of code, and I will try to explain it as best I can. All of the code that I'm going to show you today is going to be on GitHub shortly after I get off stage and find some place to sit. A lot of the code that I'm going to show you is already in a couple of other GitHub repos. So there's that. Okay, where's the clicker? Is my light still green? Yes. All right. This is how I start every SignalR talk. Anybody seen this quote before? It's a great quote, right? The first time I saw SignalR, this quote popped into my mind. It never went out. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now, why would I start a SignalR talk talking about magic? Okay? Because it doesn't make sense. SignalR breaks all the rules. It broke a lot of rules at Microsoft, too, and I'll tell you some of that. I'll give you a 2-minute history lesson on it at some point today. What is SignalR? It's a series of abstractions. It's a series of abstractions and libraries and NuGet packages that provide an abstraction around 2 words that should not go together. Persistent HTTP connections. Brady, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. HTTP is what kind of protocol? Stateless, right. Okay, in English. Okay, what do I mean by that in English? I'll tie it together for you. SignalR makes real-time HTTP in JavaScript and in .NET. And when I say .NET, I mean primarily PCL as well. So you can do this on your Android and your iOS devices using Xamarin. At one point in the development of SignalR, there was actually a Java library. I don't know the status of that Java library at this point. I can't really, tell you when that's going to be there. This is my SignalR shirt. This pew-pew thing is not for, stinky, which is what my son loves to say. He says, your shirt says poo-poo. I have to get a handsome and poo-poo joke in there, okay? This is a shirt that is about a game that the SignalR guys made for the Redmond Build Conference called Shooter. And I believe if you go to shooter.net or shooter.signalr.net, I can't remember which one, you could actually play the game. Please don't do that during the talk. You will get distracted and you won't learn anything. Okay, and it's SHOOTR, and it's kind of an unwritten rule. If you build an application with SignalR, you have to name it with something capital R. Okay, it just makes Phil Hack's skin crawl. So do it. You do it all the time. All right. Here's the quick little history lesson that I told you about. Damien and David. Damien is a pretty high up PM at Microsoft. He's gotten even higher since the development of SignalR. David Fowler is a star dev at Microsoft. Absolutely brilliant developer. Those 2 guys got together one day and they said, hey, we both kind of have this idea about making a real-time HTTP abstraction. We should do this. So they did it for fun in their bedrooms. They just communicated back and forth. They just had fun with it. They just, built it all out. And as they built it all out, they open sourced it. And I'm going to show you real quickly where they put it. there we go. They put it all on GitHub. So it's github.com/SignalR. And that's where you can get all their stuff. I've actually gone directly to the SignalR repo. I think it might be in the official ASP.NET repo now, but when they started doing it, they did it here, and they did it for fun. At one point, we saw that it was really popular and developers loved it, and we thought, well, let's just make this a part of ASP.NET. And they said, you can do that on one condition. You keep it open. You have to keep it open source. So they're on the ASP.NET team. They have this open source thing, and they basically said, hey, you have to keep this thing open source. So we said, okay, well, we can't kind of take an open source thing and put it into a closed source thing. What happened? It went open source. Now, I'm not trying to stand up here and tell you that SignalR was the beginning of the end for closed source ASP.NET, but it definitely lit a match. Okay, so when I say that we're breaking all the rules, we're breaking all the rules of HTTP, and we're breaking all the rules when it comes to Microsoft being a closed source place. We actually use this as an opportunity to get it in and open up some other stuff. I'd also like to welcome one of the original developers on the project, who's actually back in the room, which scares the you-know-what out of me. Taylor Mullen, standing up back there with Glenn. He's done some good work. At some point, you'll probably want to give him a round of applause. All right? Okay. So what they did with SignalR was they said, there's this awesome thing out there called WebSockets. There's this pretty awesome thing out there called server-sent events. WebSockets isn't supported on every server and every client. Server-sent events isn't either. And long polling is, it's kind of for old browsers and old clients. Anybody in here think WebSockets is the very last real-time HTTP technology that's going to be introduced on the world? Yeah, I didn't think so. Technology always evolves. So if you code your stuff against WebSockets, when the new thing comes along, WebSockets 2 or WebSockets 19 or whatever it's called, you'll have to change your code. You'll have to change everything, And not only that, you'll have to tell people, well, you want to use this browser and this client. You'll have to stipulate usability rules. It's painful. That's why SignalR is an abstraction. What they actually do is they figure out what the server and the client can do, and they use whatever the best option is going to be. So first they say, server, client, can you do WebSockets? Nope, can't do WebSockets. Can you do server-sent events? Yep, okay, so we're gonna tie each other up with server-sent events. If you can't, I might get the order wrong, Taylor, forgive me. They try forever frame, not really sure how that works, and then they try long polling. Long polling is probably what you had to do years and years ago when your PM came to you and he said, whenever the database changes, I want the screen to update in real time. I don't want them to have to hit the F5 button. Anybody ever had a request like that? If you'd have had SignalR, you could have done it. All right? You could have done that much, much easier. But the nice thing is that's actually what SignalR does when you're on down-level clients and servers. Kind of like this slide's going to point out. So let's say you're on old school client or old school server. What happens? The client says, do you have any data? 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 The server goes, here you go. Client goes, do you have any data? 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 And this process starts over and over and over again. Anybody ever written jQuery code to do something like this, or Angular, or insert your JavaScript framework of choice? You ever done this? You just felt like a hack, right? Okay. That's because sometimes those browsers and those servers make you do this. So what they did was they just say, I'm going to try this, I want to try this, I want to try this, and if none of it works, I'm going to default and go back to long polling. Bam. Still works. So here's how it works on new school servers and clients. Let's say you're running in Azure, or you're running on IIS, post 7 or 8. You've got WebSockets installed and all that good stuff. And then you're using a modern browser. First thing that happens is the client says, hey, I do real time. Do you? The server says, you betcha. You betcha. I totally do. But that can't happen again. Timing is everything. And at that point, since they both do real time, they just party in real time. And it opens up a live connection, a WebSocket. But Brady, somebody told me one time that IIS has a limited memory pool, and if I get too many connections, the world is going to cave in and flaming bats are going to eat the web server. Not with SignalR. Now, Taylor can go a little bit more deep into this than I can. This is not the forum for this conversation. But let's just say the word async. Async. All these calls back and forth to the server are non-blocking. As soon as the call's finished, everything is released so that the next call can come through. If you want to know how that works, again, this is not the conversation. This is not the time to have that conversation. But if you want to bum rush that guy back there in the corner, feel free. He could explain it to you. That said, I did ask him a question the other day about SignalR, and he goes, "Well, I haven't been on that team in a really long time." Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's do Brady's canonical hit counter demo. Damien has a canonical demo too. I'll be doing that one as well today. So I'm sitting here on the SignalR thing. Real quickly, this is where the code's going to be. You can find me on any social network. I have a really creative username. It's my whole name without any spaces. So if you go to GitHub and you do a little search in my repository list for Ignite, this is the one talk I'm going to have here. I had a short one earlier in the week at the theater. So you can grab all the code. It's not there yet, but it'll be there probably before I get on the plane this afternoon. Just want to point that out. Oh, feel free to grab it. All right, so I've got VS 2015 open over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly create a new ASP.NET app. And I'm going to be creating a vCurrent ASP.NET app. Now, I'm going to use an empty one because I don't need a lot of stuff. I just don't need a whole bunch of crud here. So I'm going to go ahead and do an empty one. And the first thing you have to do is you have to install SignalR. It's not that intimidating. We do that through, there you go. NuGet is love. All right, so I'm going to right-click this guy. Has anybody seen the new NuGet window in VS 2015? It's nice, right? I like this thing. All right, so I'm going to go over here, do a quick little search for Signal. Oh, that can't be a good thing. Am I connected? I would say nice things about, error occurred, error details. Oh, that can't be good. Am I connected? Oh, NuGet. Okay, well, good thing I have it pre-coded. Woohoo! So go ahead and open this one up. This is one I could do in my sleep, I'm not kidding. So I've already got all the NuGets installed in this one, so I'll just go ahead and open this up. And what I'm going to do real quickly is I'm actually going to take out some code here. Take out this code. Take out this code, because I want to code it for you by hand. So what I've done is I've got this plain Jane project in which I have installed the SignalR package. I'll show you my package list real quick so you can see very few tricks. So there's got Bootstrap, because I went ahead and installed Bootstrap manually. So I did just an empty web project. I installed Bootstrap, installed some other stuff, and I installed SignalR. Now I'm going to be using jQuery in this first demo. In the second demo, I'm going to show you how you can tie SignalR up with Angular. So I won't be doing a React demo because I haven't learned it yet. My apologies. So what I've got is I've got this plain Jane little class here called HitCounterHub. Is that visible in the back? Can anyone not see it? Good, good. Okay. So I've got my HitCounterHub, and you can see that it's a pretty basic class. It just inherits from Hub right here. Let's zoom in a little bit on that. So you can see that it just inherits from a class called SignalR.Hub. It's going to give you a couple of small, overrides that you can party on, some little stuff that you can do. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a static integer, and I'll call this guy hit count. And I'm going to set it to 0. You probably want to store this in an application variable or use EF. Julie can show you how to do that. But you might want to persist this in a better way other than a static integer. But I just, it's a demo. There's that. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say override on connected. So you see that on connected override that I've got there. I'm going to go ahead and on connected, and it's going to put everything in here for me. So it's going to do a return base dot on connected. Everything should be ready to go. This is the method that's going to run when the client, which is going to be JavaScript, reaches out and communicates with this hub. This is the first thing that's going to happen. The event's going to fire. This event handler is going to run, and I'm going to add 1 to my hit counter. Anybody ever written hit counters in Java? Little applets. I'm showing my age here. Taylor's like, what is Java? What are you talking about? So, anybody ever done that? This is more fun. This is all HTML. So what I'm going to do is say hit count plus equal to 1. And then I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to say clients dot all, because I want to party on all the clients. And you'll see here that it doesn't give me anything. Now, if you were in VS 2013, I actually don't know why this doesn't do this in 2015. You would get a little box there that says dynamic expression. because clients.all and the other things that dangle off of clients are dynamic objects. I did not like the idea of dynamic in C# at all until I played with SignalR. And then it completely made sense. So you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm saying clients.all, and I'm just going to create a method. Hit counted. Hit counted. And I'm going to pass it value. Oh, hit count. Pass it the hit count right here. And I'm pretty much done at that point. That's about all I need to do to fire an event back to the client so that the client knows that something just happened on the server. Yes, the client's going to reach out, hit this hub. Once he hits this hub, the hub is going to fire an event back to the client. So we're going server to client at this point, and the client's going to respond. Now, how complicated is the code for the client? It's about 10 lines. So the first line is, I have to install jQuery. That's a dependency of SignalR. So I'm just going to put in my jQuery script right there. Then I'm going to drop in my SignalR script. Then I'm going to create a new hub connection. And the way you would do this, I'll go ahead and just get rid of this for you real quick. I would say var con is equal to hub connection. And now I could pass it a URL if I wanted to. And then you'll see this later on. You can enable cross-site communication. So I could have my SignalR client running on one server and my SignalR hub running on a different server. Don't panic and freak out. Cross-site scripting isn't bad if you've got cores, and SignalR supports cores. So you can actually control which servers are going to be able to get to your hub if you want to. It also supports all the built-in ASP.NET authorized stuff. You can basically put an authorize attribute right over your hub, and your hub will not respond unless that user happens to be authenticated. So all the goodness about ASP.NET is rolled right into SignalR. All right, so I've got a new hub here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip back over, and I'm going to select this guy, because I've gone ahead and used the hub name attribute because I'm a control freak. And what I've done is I've specified what I want my hub's name to be. If I had not done that, in the client side, I would pass the string hit counter hub with a lowercase h. Do you guys honor the uppercase h or the lowercase h now? Lower, okay. So if you're persnickety about that and you want an uppercase, use the hub name attribute and give it an uppercase. Just want to point that out. Why did they do that? Because in JavaScript, the convention is to begin everything with a lowercase character. So they just assume that's what you probably want to do in your JavaScript. All right. They made a couple of other assumptions that we're going to get to, and most of them were pretty good. I haven't found one that wasn't yet. So now I'm going to create a hub connection, or a hub proxy. And to do that, I'm going to say create hub proxy, and I'm going to pass it the name of that hub, hit counter. So I'll just paste that right there. So now I've got my connection. It hasn't done anything yet. I haven't started it. And I've also got my hub proxy, which I can reach out to the hub and communicate with it. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to do something whenever that event fires. So I want my hub to do something like, I don't know, on an event. On. See one of those assumptions that they made? Fantastic assumption. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hit counted guy, I'm going to paste it right here, and I'm going to give it a callback. Hit count. And what I've got up here is this page count guy. I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to say text is equal to my hit count. Boom. And what that's going to do is whenever that event fires on the server, this client is just going to dynamically respond and know what to do. Pretty high order API, right? Doesn't get much easier than this. Next thing I'll do is I'll start my connection. If I don't type in the wrong place. I'll say con.start. Now, if I had a method on my hub that I explicitly wanted to invoke, I would use hub.invoke. Okay, and I'm just going to put this here. I'm not going to give it anything. But when I did this the first time, nothing happened. And I was sort of annoyed. And I looked at that start method and I thought it might take a second for that connection to go back to the server. So maybe the SignalR team was nice enough to give me a callback kind of a functionality in here. So what I did was I took this code, and at that time, before we introduced promises, I would do this, and once my connection started, I would invoke a method on the hub. So I do want to point out that you have that capability. I'm not going to be invoking any methods on the hub today, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. But today we've actually implemented, I think it's called promises. So you could actually use .done, and you could put your callback inside of done rather than put it into start. It's up to you. Pick your poison. So I do want to point out that that is an asynchronous call. So if you want something to happen after the connection is started, you want to put it in the callback of the start method. Just want to stress that. So with that said, the only other thing that you need to do is you need to add an Owen startup class to your ASP.NET page. And in that Owen startup class, you'll just do app.map_SignalR. Now, when you install the SignalR NuGet package, when you can connect to NuGet the way I cannot right now, when you do that, there's going to be a README file, and the guys literally gave you code that you can copy out of that file and paste into your project. So it doesn't get much easier than that. They were very convenient, wanted to make it really easy for you. But here's a rule of thumb. If you make your hub and you make your client and you try to communicate with that hub using that client and it just doesn't work and you put a breakpoint in your hub and nothing happens, you probably forgot this step. I forget this step all the time. I've forgotten this step on stage about a dozen times. So I just want to point out, you have to have that Owen startup class when you map the SignalR hubs. What does that mean? Anybody ever mapped MVC or API routes? This is sort of the equivalent of that. You're basically mapping to the hub inside of the in the ASP.NET runtime. Oh, refreshing. Okay, so I'll close this guy down, and now I'm going to just close down the client because I'm not going to be doing anything else in there. I'm going to leave this guy open, and I'm just going to hit F5 real quick. I'm going to do this. And now I'm going to open up another browser here. I'm going to paste it here. And see what's happening? As the hit updates, it updates across all those other clients simultaneously. Is that pretty cool? You guys like that? You're doing my ego humongoloid favors. But that's not all. It slices too. It also knows when the client disconnects. So here I'll do hit count, clients. Never do this. That's how bugs happen. All right, so I'm just going to paste that code in there. Now all I'm doing now is I'm decrementing that number, decreasing that number by 1, and I'm just bouncing the event back up to the client at this point. So I just want to let you know that I'm just doing some magic here. I'm going to hit F5 one more time. You'll see this guy pop open real quick. Open up another browser, paste it in. Open up another browser, paste it in. Open up a different browser and paste it in. And then 3, 2, 1, 0. You like that? Okay. But that's not all. It plays music too. It plays music. Get your computers out. God, I hope this works. The guys have been looking forward to this demo for a while. So, one of the things that I like to do for fun, in addition to partying with SignalR, is that I really like music, mostly of the electronic style, and specifically down-tempo. And I also like to play with small devices. One of my new favorite small devices, real quickly, I'm just going to show you some resources. These are on the last slide, signalr.net, asp.net/SignalR, and me. This is the Sub Pop 25 anniversary. It's wonderful. My two boys there. Anybody like Sub Pop? Nirvana? Cool. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and show you real quickly this neat company, and I'm not advertising for them. I don't work for them. They don't pay me. I just like their stuff. This is a product company called Little Bits. Anybody want to teach your kids how to do electronics? I do. So I got this. What it is, it's a series of small little bits that connect together magnetically. And what the company did was they got together with this awesome synthesizer company known as Korg. And they created the synth kit. And here's what the synth kit looks like. couple different things on the screen. You've got a couple of oscillators. You've got a filter. You've got a little speaker with an 1/8" out jack that happens to be pumping through this room right now. And I've basically built the thing that you probably just saw me post up on Twitter, and it's sitting over here on the desk. Okay, it's sitting over here on the podium with me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask the gentleman who controls the sound to turn it up a little bit. Ha! Nobody? A little bit? A little bit? All right. Okay, you hear that? Might want to turn it down considerably. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to run this site directly on localhost. So I've just got it running right here on localhost. You can see that I've got one client connected right now, but nobody's pushing any of the buttons. Go like this, just to be super safe. I don't want to get sued. Come on, don't be scared. Audience is playing a synthesizer. You guys think that's neat? So all this is one of the bits that I've got is their little Wi-Fi bit. And I've written a .NET client that will just kind of make calls to their API. Guess what their API does? It connects to the bit using WebSockets. So as you're executing by hitting the button here, what's happening is every time somebody pushes down the button, it raises that positive number up, and you're controlling a filter on this device. A filter is like a wah pedal. So it looks like we've got a couple people connected. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the filter up a little. You guys like that? Is that neat? So what you're doing is you're actually controlling it in real time. Okay, so I'm going to raise my hands and everybody let go of the button. Let go? Somebody didn't let go. Now everybody push. See if it'll actually change the time. Is that neat? All right. So there's your synth experiment. Right, now what I'm going to do is turn this down. Okay. You might want to cut it because it'll be for a little while. All right, you guys think that's kind of cool? So what you just did was you basically controlled the filter on a synthesizer from the server side. As you connect that hub, what ends up happening is every single time somebody else pushes the button, what ends up happening is you're driving that treble up a little bit. Now, why do I want to show you this? This actually factors into a legitimate demo. And the reason why is we've had a lot of questions from folks. How can I use SignalR with Angular? If it's based on top of jQuery, I'm an Angular user. I don't want to switch back to using jQuery. I actually want to use Angular to do some of this stuff. So what I want to point out is that we do have that capability. Now, I don't know the status of if there's going to be an Angular client JS thing as well for SignalR. I can't attest to that. Taylor could tell you that later on if you're interested. But what I do want to point out is that you can do all this stuff inside of Angular. So I've got a simple page controller right here. And you'll see that we're actually data binding user count. This is actually just simple Angular JS data binding logic. We've just got a template, and we're just partying on stuff right here. Okay? Oh shoot, my bad. Thank you very much. So I've got an Angular client here. Sorry. So here we've got the template. So you see that I've got user count.active users. And if I were to scroll down a little bit more, what you'd see is that we're doing the percentage right here. And what I want to point out is that I've got jQuery installed, and I've also installed SignalR, and then I'm using the Bootstrap JS for a couple of little things here and there. And then obviously there's Angular. Now, this line of code right here is pretty awesome, Because what I'm doing is I'm saying, whenever I tell you I want the $, I'm passing you the jQuery $, so I have access to the jQuery stuff inside of my Angular stuff. So I do want to point out that you can do that. Now, one thing that I noticed when I was partying on this guy, and you'll see here that in my scope.connect method, I'm just activating my SignalR hub, turning on my connection, and then I'm partying it. There are a couple of great samples out there which actually wrap the SignalR connection and hub inside of an Angular factory so that it's, what's the word I'm looking for here? A singleton. Okay, so it's just a singleton, and you can just pass it into any of your controllers, and it uses root scope to glue all those controllers together. Now, I'm not doing that because I only have one Angular controller inside of this JavaScript, but one thing that I want to point out is that when I was responding to events on my hub, I wasn't getting anything happening. Like I didn't get the output that I expected because I forgot to apply this word. See, what I had before was I basically had this code right here, and I didn't have the apply, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. But once you add scope.apply, it will actually apply all those changes back to your view from your models. So I do want to point out, you want to use scope.apply if you want to change any of your stuff coming back from the hub. I don't exactly know why it does that. You guys are probably better at JavaScript than I am, so you can probably tell me, or Taylor could tell me. But then one thing that I also want to point out right here is that you have to pass in the jQuery. So you have to pass in that $. Once you pass in that $, it'll start partying. So that's how you can glue those guys together. So you can use, point for this demo, is that we can make music with SignalR, of course. But the main point of this demo is to show you that if you're an Angular user, you can actually party on SignalR as well. You can just glue jQuery and Angular together. Anybody Angular user? Just out of curiosity, how many of you are also React.js users? Any React.js users in the room? No, obviously jQuery, all the hands go up, right? jQuery. 45% of the internet can't be wrong. Cool. All right. I'm going to switch back over here and close down that demo. Sorry, guys. Okay. Now, if you want to party with little bits, hit me up. I can help you out with it. I've been talking to one of their evangelists for a little while about this demo and some other stuff that I want to do with them. They have an API. It lives in the cloud. You can imagine why I want to talk to them. I want to bring them into Azure. I think that would be a wonderful combination. But, there's that. Because we have this big IoT push right now, and their IoT devices. I think that would be kind of cool. All right. Client targeting with SignalR hubs. This is one thing that I want to show you really quick because, a lot of people ask, well, what if I don't want to hit all of the clients? What if I don't want to talk to all of the clients? We've already showed you how to do all. So if one client calls the hub, you can say clients.all.doWork. Now, based on the fact that the SignalR guys made some assumptions about how you'd want to figure out how to do this, what do you think it looks like if you want to call yourself? Oh, I totally threw that one off. It's caller. You want to call back to the caller that called you. I think that's next. So there's caller. So if you actually want to call only the guy that called you, like let's say you're doing a database update, and when the web API runs, you want to call back to the caller and say, everything's cool, this is how you would do that. You would actually just call back to caller, and the guy that called the hub or connected to the hub is all well and good. Let's say you don't want to call the caller. You want to call the other guys. Others. That's when you want to call the other clients other than the one that called into the hub. There are also methods that you can call users, and you can pass in the username or user, I can't remember which one it is, and then you can also do groups. Now, what the SignalR guys did to kind of prove it out was they built legitimately an IRC clone that runs in the web browser called Jabber. I think it's on jabber.net, J-A-B-B-R, is that right? Jabber.net? Cool. So if you wanted to go to Jabber, you could take a look at it. Now, why would you want to have groups in there? Well, I might want to jump into a group and only send messages to people in that particular group. So a chat room is kind of your canonical SignalR demo, and Jabber is kind of the canonical chat room. Because you can hop into different groups, you can do different stuff, you can talk to different people, you can send users messages, and that kind of thing. And that was kind of how they proved out if they were answering all the important things when it comes to real time with SignalR, was they just built a big chat room. And what was interesting was for a little while, when I first went to Microsoft, I was kind of the SignalR cheerleader. And I was trying to get in touch with David Fowler and ask him a couple of questions because I was going to do a talk like this. And I hit him up on Link, and his Link message says, you should probably just hit me up on Jabber, because that's where he stayed, and that's where the community interacted. Hanselman and Hack were always in there communicating with him, and the community and all that good stuff. Well, how I want to show you how to target different browsers is actually not a demo that I came up with. It's a demo that Damien's done quite a few times. It's his move shape demo. And I like to show this demo not only because it shows how you can target the other guys that didn't call you, or not only that, but why you would want to call the other guys that didn't call you. And it's also going to show you a really great use for SignalR online games. Taylor's a big game guy. He's built a awesome JavaScript gaming framework that he refuses to release for some strange reason. And a lot of the stuff was inspired by some of the stuff that they were doing in SignalR and wanting to build Shooter and all these other fun things. So I'm going to show you Damien's move shape demo real quick. Okay? And I've tweaked it just a little bit. Tweaked his move shape demo just slightly. Now what I'll do is I'll go into the move shape hub first, and I'll show you that I've just got one simple method, move shape, and I'm going to pass it X and Y. And then I'm going to say, everybody else, the shape has moved. Why do you think I would not want to use clients.all there? Because as you move, it's going to move back to where you were. So that's when you'd want to use others. I want to fly my ship around the screen, but I want you guys to see where I'm flying my ship to. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, cool. Now, in the JavaScript side, and I want to stress that you do not need to use jQuery UI in SignalR. That is not an absolute hard and fast requirement. If you want to click on something and move it around the screen, then yeah, you got to use it. So I am using jQuery UI right here just for the drag and drop capabilities that it's going to provide. And I'm just pulling in the combined jQuery UI. You can do whatever you want. Now, just like before, I've got a shape on the screen. It's right here. I'm going to grab an instance of that shape. I'm going to new up my connection. I'm going to connect to the hub. Whenever the shape moved event calls, because somebody in another client was making calls to the hub, I want you to move the shape around on the screen. Damien's demo is kind of cool. It's a red square, and his red square shows the coordinates inside the square, so it's like updating continuously as it moves around. I got kind of tired of stealing Damien's demo, so I've kind of customized it a little bit. And then right here, I do shape.draggable, and that's jQuery love. It's basically every time you drag the shape around the screen, I want you to call the move shape hub to tell all the others where you're moving it around to, so they can see it moving around on their screen as though it's being controlled remotely from other clients. And then we're going to start the connection. Pretty simple. So I'll just hit F5 real quick. Again, the purpose of this is to show you the others functionality. This is what everybody sees when I email them at work. Okay? And I've switched back because Glenn said that my temporary Twitter icon scared him. Had way too much facial hair, sort of a Rick Rubin look. So I've got me on the screen 2 times. I'm going to click my square and I'm going to move it around. So you see, as I move it around on one screen, it's dynamically moving around on all the other screens. Pretty cool, huh? Paste this in. I showed that to Pranav the other day, and Pranav was like, dude, that's really creepy. All right. It gets better. I think it gets better. Okay. SignalR is easy to do in JavaScript. You can totally dial into your hub, talk to it, party on it, and everything is, totally good to go. You don't really have to do a whole lot of extra work if you want to, do this inside of .NET. So I've already shown you how you can connect to a SignalR hub using JavaScript. Look carefully at that code. Very simple, very simple. Well, Brady, it was probably designed for the web. Like, I can't imagine doing real-time in any other context. So, I mean, like, it's got to be super hard in C#. Like, I probably got to handle threads, and there's async stuff, and oh my God, it's got to be so incredibly hard. No, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same, line for line, with one exception. Can anybody spot the exception? Capitalization. That's the only difference. Is that neat? That was another assumption the SignalR team made. If they learn how to do it one way, we don't want to make them jump through 10,000 hoops to do it a different way. We want it to be just as easy as it was in their JavaScript life. Would anybody disagree that real-time looks pretty easy in JavaScript with SignalR? Anybody, any disagreements on that one? One disagreement? A couple disagreements? Okay. 7 or 8 disagreements? You're wrong. It's just as easy to do it in .NET. I just want to point all that out. It's just as easy. Now, in the hub connection on the .NET side, there is one minor difference. You're going to have to pass it a URL. It makes the assumption you're going to go back to the hosting server if you're running inside of a web browser, because that's probably where your hub is going to live. So if you want to do it inside of .NET, you're going to have to give it a URL to which it can go and communicate. I just want to stress that. Now, the first time I had David and Damien on Channel 9, Damien did his move shape demo, and I started foaming at the mouth. I hadn't actually seen it yet. And I got pretty excited about it. And I said, dude, that's awesome. You know what would make it awesomer? This, a Connect. That would make it so awesome. He actually looked at me and he says, you know, it's weird. There's a guy out there on the internet, and it's like, I'm deaf in my left ear, so I always stand on the left side. I'm on the left, David's in the center, and Damien's on the right. And I said, that'd be really cool if you hooked it up to a Connect. And he said, some guy out on the web built a home security system using a Connect, and it senses the skeleton that's in the room, and then it takes a picture, and it posts a picture of the service bus. And then the SignalR part is the picture updates whenever the picture happens to land in the storage container. And David's kind of looking at him funny. If you haven't met David, he's kind of a smart aleck. He's a nice guy, but he's kind of a smart aleck. He's looking at Damien, and he just goes, that guy. He points to me, because that was my first demo. I like to blame that demo for helping me get into Microsoft. But what I wanted to do was to take Damien's move shape demo and tie it up with a Connect. So that's exactly what I've done. Now, I took this code directly out of my file here and pasted it into that slide. So it's exactly the same code that you just saw on that slide. It's C#. It looks exactly like the JavaScript code that you use to communicate back and forth to SignalR. Okay, so it's exactly like the JavaScript code, exactly like the C# code that I just showed you, with one pretty drastic difference. It's got all of this stuff that, as far as I'm concerned, only Clit Rumpkus really understands, because he's done lots and lots and lots of Connect stuff. But what I'm doing is, whenever the skeleton is trapped by the Connect and it sees that I'm moving around on the screen, it's going to call that move shape hub that's running inside of my web project, and my ugly mug is going to move around on the screen, and I'm going to control it with a Connect, because I can connect .NET code to a SignalR hub running on the server, just like I can do using JavaScript to connect to that hub on the server. And in this particular circumstance, I've got .NET code connecting to the hub from one application, and I've got JavaScript code connecting to the hub from the web application itself. Now, I have 2 projects in this solution. Somebody take a stab. Which one do I need to run first? The website. Because the website hosts the hub. It's very important. That's going to become a little bit more important later on. The hub lives on the server, okay, or in the host, as we'll get to in a moment with self-hosting. So the hub actually lives on the server side. So if I were to run this Connect daemon before I run my website, we're going to get an error. Why do I tell you that? Because you're going to be so excited, you're going to go download the code, you're going to hook it up to your Connect, and it's not going to work, and you're going to curse my name. Okay, so don't do that. Run the website first. And I do want to point out, if you do grab the code and you do like programming with Connect, and you have one of the newfangled Connects, like the one in my living room that I never take anywhere, this code probably will not work with that Connect. You'd have to update it to the Connect 2.0 SDK. I'm actually using the old Connect and the 1.8 SDK because my Connect lives at home. So I do want to point that out. So, with all that said, I'm going to go up here, select my web app. I'm going to run my web app. And you'll see there's my ugly mug popping up on the screen one more time. If I were to open up a browser, put it right there, you're going to see this guy's going to move around. Everything's going to be cool. I'll put this guy over here, put this guy up here. Oh, not there. I'll just close one. I'll close that one. I'll leave this one open. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click the daemon. I'm going to say debug, start new instance. I'm going to pull up my ugly mug one more time. I'm going to back up and hopefully not fall. And now when I move my hand in front of the connect, my ugly mug is going to move around the screen. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Let me exit this guy. So you can see that we can do all that stuff and more and party on it, have a good time. But I'm going to go ahead and go into my next demo real quick, which is going to be about self-hosting. Okay? We're going to talk about self-hosting here, and I'm going to open up my solution. So there we go. So that was a native move shape demo. Now, Brady, I don't have a web server, or I don't want to deploy it to my web server, or I'm not running in Azure or whatever else. So how am I going to be able to do this? I actually had a gentleman ask me the other day. He said, I have an application that I need to build internally. He goes, I'm not going to install IIS. There's some reason why I can't do that. How can I do this in my corporate environment? And I said, well, the cool thing is, since we're using Owen, you can actually host your SignalR hub or your MVC pages or your web API controllers. You can host all of that stuff using Owen inside of any .NET executable. So how do you do that? You just install the package. You install Microsoft.asp.net.signalr.selfhost. If you forget that the way I do every single time I'm looking for it, like I did 3 or 4 times this week building this next set of demos up, if you just do a quick search for SignalR and host in the NuGet window, you'll be able to find it. So it'll pull it down right here. So I just want to stress that. You can actually get this guy and just do a search for host. And you can see those 4 lines of code right there. Remember the README that we drop in whenever you install the SignalR NuGet package? They drop in a different README whenever you do the host package, and it gives you this code, and you can just copy it out and paste it into your console write lines or your console application, as I'm going to do here in a moment. And it will light up a host your hub, and then you can reach out and you can communicate that to that hub using JavaScript and .NET and whatever else you want to do. So I do want to point out that you have that kind of capability. Helps if you can see it, right? So we're going to do a quick demo. Probably do 1 or 2 demos. Just want to stress that. So what I've got here is I've got a host, and if you look in the packages, you can see that I've got the self-host package installed right here. I just noticed that VS 2015 remembers that I've zoomed in to 150%. I think Visual Studio 2013 forgets and you have to zoom back in again whenever you close and open a file. That's an awesome feature. It's fantastic. So I want to go ahead and open up this program.cs, and what you'll see is that I've just got a pretty simple main method. And inside of my main method, I'm actually saying I want you to use my Owen startup class. I want you to host at this particular port on localhost, and then I'm going to tell you that I'm running the server and everything is cool. There's my startup class. It's just like the startup class that you would add to any of your ASP.NET projects. You're just using it right here, and you can go. I'll try to make it, Glenn. And then I've got a value hub right here. And all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be passing it an integer, and when I pass it the integer, it's going to show it up on the screen. I just want to show you that real quickly. And what I've also got is a simple little client right here. It's another console application. It's the same code that you've already seen. Now, we've got about 6 or 7 demos, and there's a thing that I learned in psych school. It takes 6 tries of stimulus to learn one thing. So by the end of this talk, you will have seen this code 6 times or more, and you'll totally know how to do SignalR, because it really is just 4 function calls. Create the connection, create the hub, set up your event handlers, got to do it in that order, then you start your connection and you invoke methods on your hub. So I just want to point out that it's basically the same code you've seen in a couple of other demos. That's by design. And I'm just going to go ahead and start up my connection and party on it. Now, I've already got this project set up so that I can just hit F5 and it's going to run my host. Then it's going to run the client. Then it's going to run this WPF client right here. Okay? And I've got a little WPF client. Pardon me. With a slider on it. And all I'm going to do is when I slide that slider, the other client is going to show me what the value of that slider happens to be. What you'll probably notice is that it's reversed. That'll make sense in a minute. I've got it reversed on purpose. So I'm just going to hit F5, and what you should see is that the host begins to run, and then another client is going to reach out and make a connection to it, and he's not going to say anything on the screen. But what you can see there is that I've got the service running. Here's my client running, and now I can go like this. And you can see that I'm sending messages to the hub using this client, using the invoke method. The hub is hosted right here, and this client is connected to it, and as the hub fires events, that client is actually just going to write the stuff out on the screen. That kind of makes sense? So you don't need IIS, you don't need Azure. You can do it in IIS, you can do it in Azure if you want to, but you can also do something like create a Windows service or a console application, and you can self-host your SignalR hub just like you can with Web API and MVC. So just want to stress that. Now, what I also did in here, does anybody know what a theremin is? You ever heard of a theremin? Those of you that haven't, it's an interesting instrument. There's a large metal base at the bottom with a lot of electricity in it, and there's a rod that comes up out of it. And it basically creates a static electrical field around that rod. And as you get close to the rod, it makes like pretty creepy 60s horror movie sounds. It's a neat instrument. I like building those. They're a lot of fun to build. So what I've done is I've used my little bit set up here, my little synth that I've got. Oh, I don't want to add a new project. And my connect, and I've created a theremin using SignalR. So I'll open up my CS proj for my theremin project, and I'm going to open up, oh, there I go again. I'm going to add that project, existing project. I'll go in right here to my theremin controller, and this is really just kind of mashing together two different demos that I've already shown you, the connect demo, sending messages to a thing, to a hub, and the little bits demo, which actually reaches out and communicates with the little bit thing. Now what I'll show you real quickly is what that code looks like. I've got in my app config, I've got an access token and a device ID. If you check out my code from GitHub after I publish it up there and you see that I still have that access token and that device ID in my app config, do me a favor and submit a pull request because I might have forgotten to take it out. Okay, so just and don't hack my little bit because I really like it. So, and what I'm going to do here is it's going to reach out to the hub. This is a client, so it's going to make a connection to the hub. It's going to start listening for events on that hub. And whenever I send it a value that I'm reversing, as you'll see right here, whenever it gets a value, it's actually going to use a little bit client. It's going to authenticate to that client, and it's going to set its output. Now that -1 means I don't want you to run for 1 second or 1 millisecond. I want you to just turn on. So if you're still playing with the real-time synth, now would be a good time to stop because you'll mess it up. Okay? Too many signals. Please no nefariosity in the audience. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go into my solution properties real quickly, and I'm going to set it so that everything turns on. There we go right here. I'm just going to go ahead and run everything. Have a little bit of volume, please. Hopefully this will work. I'll be here all week. I am overjoyed that those two demos worked. Thank you for being here for those. Thank you. That was wonderful to do. So, you guys like that? Is that neat? Is that kind of compelling, hopefully? Okay. All right. Now, all this stuff is well and good, Brady, but I like to do Web API, or I like to do MVC. Now, when I first started learning how to use SignalR, one of the things that I did on the service side was I created a dependency resolver for my MVC controllers, a dependency resolver for my Web API controllers, a dependency resolver for my SignalR hubs, and then I used something like Ninject to basically store a bunch of static service classes into my IOC container. Why did I do that? Because I thought that's what I had to do to send messages on the server side whenever somebody called my web API back to my hub. I thought I would have to glue them all together and hook up to events with those different services. By the way, this is going to be another interactive demo. Feel free to get your computers out or your phones. No, I will not store your location. I will track you, but I will not store your location. So I do want to stress that. Now, what you can do here is not to do what I did. For the love of all, don't do what I did. Don't create 1,000 services with events that run on the server. Do this instead. Now, it looks like really long. It's one really long line of code. But what you're doing is you're hooking on to the SignalR global host. And there's two things that hang off of that. A few more, but the main two that hang off of it are the connection manager and the dependency resolver. And what you can do is, using that connection manager, you can say, I want a hub context on the server side. I want you to give me back that hub. So I call a web API controller, and in that web API controller's action method, I reach out to the global host, I ask for my hub, and then I can just say clients.all, boom, and I'm communicating with all the clients from within my action method code. And my action method will call back out to the SignalR hub, and all the guys that happen to be connected to that hub will actually respond in real time, and everybody's happy, and we can go home and, have a cocktail, or a glass of water, or milk, depending on your perspective. Now, I want to do a quick little demo of this. This will be an interactive demo, and it probably won't work very well because we're all right here together right now. This is a mapping demo. If you're interested in seeing the potential of this demo, John Galloway and I, Mr. ASP.NET, did a wonderful, I think this is going to open up in 13, did a wonderful MVA, Microsoft Virtual Academy talk on SignalR. I think we did something like 27 demos. It was a 4-hour thing. It was insane. We connected Xamarin apps and the whole universe, basically. We just made it all like dial in. Okay, so we did this stuff, and there was a video. Like, you can go out and you can go to the Microsoft Virtual Academy and you can watch this video, because we had like 1,000 people watching all over the world or more, and we actually threw this thing up on Azure that was a map. And we said, we want you to go to the map, and all you have to do is load the page. When you load the page, we're going to get your latitude and longitude using the HTML5 geo-coordinating stuff. We're going to send that up to a web API controller, and then we're going to bounce the message back out using a SignalR hub. So we pull up the map, and it was like all over. Okay? It was really, really cool. Now, we're all sitting in the same place right now, so what it's going to look like is a whole bunch of dots like in one little place. So the demo might not be that fancy, but, go with it. Okay? So what I've got here is, I'm not going to go too deeply through this code because we only have about 18 more minutes together, and I think we'll have time for questions. But I've got this location controller. Oh, my bad. I see here I'm in 2013. I didn't remember. Yay, 2015. Is that big enough? Okay. So what I'm doing is I've got this web API controller, and I have my own little custom object that just has a latitude and a longitude on it. And inside my web API controller code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, mapping hub, which I'm going to get from the global host.connectionmanager.gethub context. Now, one thing I do want to point out is if you have public methods that dangle off of your hub when you do that GitHub context, it's not going to know what they are. It's just going to know that it's a hub, and you can just make calls to it. So I just want to stress, you're not going to get a lot of the strong typing that you would expect to see from this generic approach, but you are going to get back a hub, and as you've already identified, or I've already identified for you, you can pretty much call any method you want, and as long as the client knows what to do when that method gets called, everybody's happy and they party together. So I'm just going to do that location received guy. Now, if I were to look at this hub, that has no code in it. It has no code at all. Completely empty. It doesn't have any methods that I need to call. That's because all that's going to happen is the clients are just going to respond to one another whenever the stuff happens. So in this case, I'm making a REST API call that virtually any client can reach out to and call to. And on the server side, I'm going to bubble up what happened from my SignalR code. Why is that important? Because little devices like the little bit, they can't do real time. There are some frameworks out there that can't support that kind of stuff. But everybody can speak HTTP. So as long as you can make a REST call to the server, you can fire things off of your hub and party. And then in my client code, should look pretty normal. I'm going to scroll past my key. And you'll see that right here, I'm actually going to be doing a quick post. Where did it go? Here's the response. I'm going to set up my SignalR. I'm going to connect to the hub and blah, blah, blah. But right here is when I'm actually doing a post to that API. So I'm going to do a post to that API, and then I'm going to handle the results, using SignalR, using my normal, plain Jane JavaScript SignalR code. Now, what I'm going to do next, not look at that anymore. I look at that all the time. Mapper, demo, I bet I can't remember. There we go. So I'm going to go to mapper.ignite.azurewebsites.net. You can see it right there. MAPR, where you are right now, .azurewebsites.net. It's got to spin up. It's got a cold boot. So let me take just a moment. And then I'm also zoomed in, and sometimes zooming in will hesitate. So you can see right here, we're already getting a couple of hits. Or to zoom out, as people hit this page, we're actually tracking their location and not storing it. And I'm showing you where you are on the map. So this is pretty neat. I've actually talked to a couple of companies before I came to Microsoft who wanted to do something like this to track their drivers. Or one company that wanted to use something like this where they could go out into the field and they could take a picture of a piece of graffiti. And as soon as they took the picture, it would record their coordinates and send it up so they would know where everything was. So there are a couple different ways that we could use SignalR. And I want to show you some of those canonical demos to kind of, get you excited about it. So this is one of those kind of real-world-ish demos that you could do. It's not a synthesizer. The synthesizers are definitely fun and they get applause. So that's good. Now, pardon? Can you zoom way out? Are you logging into your VPN or something? Thank you for helping me with my demo. Oh, sweet. Nice. Oh, boy. Are you tweeting it? Awesome. Tweet it. Get everybody to do it. We can see how much this will work out. We'll just leave that up. We'll just leave that up for a little while. Is that pretty neat? You guys dig that? All right. Give yourselves a round of applause. You have been the most interactive and fun audience I think I've ever had doing one of these talks. Thank you so much for having fun with me. Awesome. Okay. Now, the dark side of SignalR. Now, something I said earlier might scare you, okay? See, all those people that left, they're not going to get to know the dark side, and they're going to complain later. So there's this dark side to SignalR. Where did I tell you the hub lives? On the server. How many of you use web farms? Here's what happens. Here's what happens. So your hub lives on the server side. So whenever you make a call to that hub, as long as the other clients to whom you want to communicate are also hitting that same server in your load balanced or your Azure environment where you slid the slider out, as long as everybody's hitting the same server, everything is going to be just hunky-dory. If you're not all on the same server, this is the effect that you're going to get. So how do you solve this problem? You drop in what's called a backplane. So you drop in a backplane. Now there are three big backplanes out there. One of them is the service bus. That's the one I like to use from time to time to do things, and I've got some customers who've used it as well. If you're on-prem, there's another one. You can do it in Azure too, I guess. But if you're on-prem, there's another one. You can use a database. You could use SQL. The one that I'm going to use today, because my buddy Pranav asked me to, and he's the PM of the cache team, and he's awesome and fantastic, is I'm going to show you the Redis cache backplane. Now, I have actually gone out to the Azure portal, and I have spun up a Redis cache. If you wanted to install a Redis server in your office, you could do this on-prem as well, okay? So I just want to point that out. I asked Damien one time, I said, how do you recommend this stuff? Now, this is kind of some time back, maybe Bill Redmond, but I said, how do you recommend which backplane people should use? And he said, if they're running in Azure, tell them to use Service Bus. This is before we had Redis. He said, if they are running on-prem, tell them to use SQL, and tell all the hippies to use Redis, okay? So he's actually augmented that, and he said, if you're running in Azure, you can use Service Bus or SQL. If anybody's seen any of Clemens Vaster's talks on IoT and the Service Bus, Clemens Vasters actually wrote the very first backplane that was written on top service bus, and he was doing all this crazy stuff where like every message that came into the hub, he was actually sharding that message across n topics, maybe 4 to 7 topics. Why would he do that? Because sometimes those topics can be pretty small in their quota size. So he would shard the message so that he would share it across multiple topics. It would go through all the topics, and then it would reassemble the message on the other end and bubble it up to the hub. It's fantastically cool. It's also insanely difficult to write, which is why Damien's told me to tell you this. All of these will get you started given your context. If you need a backplane, you should try one of these to see how it works, to understand it. They are, relatively production ready. I think they are production ready. I don't know if we have a go live for any of them, but you can use these backplanes. But what you may find is, like a lot of people use a SQL backplane and they're totally happy, everything's running just fine. They might not have some of the throughput that they want, but they do have that load balance situation. So what he's actually told me to tell you guys is, try one of these out, make sure that everything works okay. It should work okay. We've not had any problems. We haven't had too many negative reports. And people do insane load, like 500,000 connections. Like 500,000 connections whenever they implement a backplane. Okay, it's completely nuts. All right? But he's told me to tell you guys, if you want to use a backplane, learn how they work, figure out which one works in your particular environment, and then you may have to either customize it or go down the road of writing your own. So there is that. Like, given your situation, given your location, given your environment, one of the default backplanes may not be what you want, but I just want to stress that, it's there if you need it for the load balanced environments. Now, what I'm going to do in my little demo, I don't know if I did the whole thing. There you go. So if you had a backplane, here's what happens. You go through the server goes through the backplane turns around and it sends everything back up to all the individual servers, which in turn send it back to all of their individual clients. So if you want to drop in a backplane, there you go. That's how you do it. Now, I've got one really quick demo, and I don't like doing chat demos with SignalR, so I save the chat demo till the very end. It's a very, very short chat demo, so I will get you out of here on time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that I have these two little batch files right here, start server A and start server B. Now what they're going to do is they're going to fire up an instance of IIS Express, one of them running on port 90, one of them running on port 91. Kind of a hack, but you get the idea. We've got two servers running with the same code. So what I'll do here is I'll open up this scaling with Redis guy because I want to show you how you dial it in. Basically, all the backplane providers, they adhere to this convention where they, just like the GitHub context, they dangle off of that global host guy inside of SignalR. I'm going to zoom into about 200, and you can see that right here I've got use Redis. If you wanted to use Service Bus, you'd be using Service Bus. I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to hide that for you real quick because I don't want you to see that. Now I've got that particular call commented out, and I'm just going to real quickly build my solution. Let me go to the next slide too. I'm going to build my solution, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go start server A, start server B. Now I've got this guy up and running. I'm going to open up another tab, and I'm going to hit 9091, and I'm going to open up another window right here, and I'm going to hit, or 9090, and I'm going to hit 9091. Now what you'll see is that this guy's on 9090, and I can send messages to him, and look what is not happening. Sadness, despair, depression, anxiety, hatred. He told me it was magic, and it's not magic. Well, it can be magical. So now I'm going to turn on my scale out, turn on my backplane by uncommenting my little handy-dandy method. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to run my batch files. Oh, that would be bad. I'm going to refresh this guy. Refresh this guy. And now we are good. So there's a guy in the audience who said, yup. When I said that they were server bound, he's probably been waiting an hour and a half to see this demo. Okay. This is the demo that I always wanted to see when I was learning how to use SignalR, because I do run in Azure and I do run in a load balanced environment. Right. Here are some resources for you. I've already shown you some of these resources. I'll go ahead and put little bits up there in case you, like me, want to teach your kids how to do electronics, or you like to play with electronics and you're scared of electricity, which, by the way, is how I got into it. Because I don't have to do anything. It's just magnetic. Party, party, party. So I just want to stress that these are the resources that you can go to. You've got my Ignite SignalR demo link up there. You've got John Galloway's MVA SignalR GitHub repository up there. A lot of the demo code that you saw has come from the MVA stuff. And the last thing I want to do, let you get your pictures in, keep your phones out, because the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to scan this and give me an evaluation. Please be honest. You promised me you wouldn't complain about Zoom It, so I'm going to hold you to it. Please be honest in your eval. Please be polite in your eval. Give me suggestions on what I can do better, what I did wrong, blah, 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 blah. But please do your evals. We appreciate that. That's the only way we know we've done good. And I would appreciate a great score. Thank you. Have a great time.